So, welcome to your interview, Ms. Easter. Would you like to introduce yourself to your voters?
Sure, I'd be happy to. My name is Erin Easter. I'm a resident of West Lafayette, obviously. My family and I live in the New Chauncey neighborhood in an old historic home, which we love, and we love living in a near campus community. Outside of that, I am currently the Director of Development for the City of West Lafayette, and prior to that, I worked for Greater Lafayette Commerce for 9 years. So I've been involved in community development, quality of life initiatives, and in the mix of government and nonprofit for the last 15 years.
Okay, well, thank you very much. My first question for you is, what do you see as the greatest challenge facing the city of West Lafayette, and how would you choose to address it?
Oh, the greatest challenge. That's really difficult. So one thing, I'm going to say this and then set it aside. I think the Wabash River is the greatest asset and also one of the greatest challenges that we'll have in the future. So I'll say that and then put it aside. And that is only because it isn't just West Lafayette, but currently our city is dealing with some really serious housing pressures. It is easy to just say it's one thing or another thing, and in reality, it's lots of elements that make housing challenging within our community. We have university growth, which is one component, but we also have faculty and staff growth. We have desirable school systems for people to be in. We have a safe community. So there are lots of attractive features for living in West Lafayette. When you have that, though, and you haven't grown your housing stock as much as we now have the opportunity to do, you really see what we're seeing today, and many communities are seeing across the United States right now, which is serious housing pressures. So we are looking at what housing looks like, what developable areas are there within the city, and what programs and services can we enact to attract single-family home buyers in some of our existing neighborhoods, and also preserve the housing that we have for its intended use.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I was going to ask you about safe and affordable housing, but I think we've covered it.
Yeah,
Um,
we need more of it for sure.
yes. So in terms of like economic development, what would you see as the right mix of development for West Lafayette?
I think West Lafayette, and this has long been Mayor Dennis's stance. There's a certain kind of business that would fit well in our community and some that don't. And I say that not because one business is better than another or more competitive or anything. It's just a measure truly of how much land we have in the city of West Lafayette and how best we use the properties that we have within our city boundaries. So as we look at continued economic growth, there are a few things that are really important. An organization that doesn't share some of the research expertise that we have here just doesn't seem like the right fit. So we have to look at our partners at Purdue and within the community and leverage what is it that we do well that nobody else does quite like we do. So looking at, for example, Purdue has a semiconductor and nanotechnology expertise. There are also, lots of engineering disciplines that we excel at here in West Lafayette on Purdue's campus, and leveraging those that we do best. And that's really the right fit. And then you also start to create an ecosystem where people are interested in moving to a new place because there are lots of opportunities that fit whatever their job or skill expertise is. You need to have a balance of enough places. So there's opportunity for upward mobility within that kind of ecosystem.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And I know you tried to set the Wabash River aside. So let's go to the Taze Aquifer.
Sure.
How should the city be managing water resources to support our growing population?
Sure. So obviously at this point in time that we're speaking, the IEDC has released their preliminary research so far on the Wabash alluvial aquifer. And then also we have the Taze Aquifer here. So if you'd like, I can go into a very cursory, elementary, to the extent that I understand it, explanation of that. But one of the conversations that we've been having within the community, and something I feel very strongly about, is that we need to focus a few things. One, we need to have a statewide plan for what our water resources are and how we protect those. So looking at the entire state of Indiana and analyzing what we really have as a water asset. Two, we need to create a plan within the state to protect that water within the state of Indiana. Currently, if you lived in Illinois and you wanted to buy a parcel of land and put a pipe on it, you probably could. And so that's an issue that we should address to make sure that we're preserving what our residents need for the long term. But I think the other component is coming up with legislation and business practices that conserve our water where we should be very responsible with it. And it's not to say that nobody's allowed to have lawns anymore. I certainly would not imagine entertaining that. But there are some things that we can do. For example, if water is leaving a manufacturing facility and you have the opportunity to build it into design early, maybe you have a closed loop system of water that gets filtered out and then gets reused again. That is less water that, is being pulled out of the ground. It's also less water that the city of West Lafayette would be processing through our water treatment utility and then discharging to the Wabash River. So I think there are a lot of things that we need to do well. And certainly this conversation that we're currently having about water in our community just helps us focus a little bit more on that. It is the most critical asset we have, and safe drinking water is the most important thing for each of us and our families in this community.
Thank you. Staying in the loop of natural resources, what do you see as the top climate issue facing the city?
I think there are a lot of things currently happening that will be a benefit. For example, Purdue has been hosting lots of forums about, small nuclear technology in coordination with Duke Energy. So thinking about that as a future climate solution. We as the city have started transferring our fleet over to be hybrid when at all possible. And if there is a great electric option that comes out someday as well, we will continue to explore those. It's a 50-50 balance right now. Indiana is still a coal heavy state. So we'd like to have some more renewable options before we're fueling our vehicles that way. But I think the other component that we as the city can do, for example, our wellness center has an entire solar array on top of the gym box. Now, your citizens aren't going to see that every day. You have to be up pretty high to be able to see that. But what it does provide is a third of the energy for that facility. And so not only are we reducing the energy that we are using, but we're being good stewards of public dollars and finding more sustainable ways to operate as a community. So as we continue to work through, new buildings, fixing buildings, looking at how we can become a more sustainable community as a whole, that will be huge. I think in terms of users, streets and sanitation and the wastewater treatment facility, highest user just because of the amount of energy it takes. And we've been having conversations about how we redesign some of our systems to require less energy in the future.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Is there any last issue that you would like to talk about before we end our interview?
We have so many wonderful things happening in West Lafayette, and we are just an incredibly fortunate community. And I, have absolutely delighted in being part of that. But I think we should all be really proud of the place that we live. We're pretty lucky, and it's a desirable place to be, and I'm grateful to be part of it.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely.
And I look forward. Yeah. And